A lonely farmer thought grief had taken everything from him, until the sound of his black horse crying near the old cabin pulled him into a truth he never imagined, a truth that would break him, heal him, and change his life forever. Before we begin, subscribe, like, and leave a comment to support more emotional stories from the Heartland. Stories that remind us that even in the darkest moments, hope still finds a way. Elias Turner had known loneliness long before he ever admitted it. The farm had grown quieter each year after his wife, Marlene, passed. The fields seemed duller, the skies dimmer, the mornings heavier. Even the wind, once playful through the wheat, now whispered sorrow with every breath. The only creature who refused to let Elias sink entirely into silence was Raven, his black stallion, a horse with eyes too knowing, too gentle, and too loyal for a world that had given Elias so little kindness. Raven had been with him through the worst nights, and those nights were many, but tonight was different. Tonight, Elias woke to a sound he had never heard from the horse before, a low, trembling cry drifting through the cold air like a wounded voice. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was grief. Elias sat up instantly. The clock read 2:14 a.m. He pulled on his boots, heart pounding, and stepped into the frosty night. Moonlight washed over the fields in ghostly silver. The air felt still, expectant, as if holding its breath. "Raven," Elias called softly. He heard the horse cry again, louder this time, coming from the direction of the old cabin near the tree-line, a place Elias hadn't entered since Marlene died, a place he avoided like a wound that never closed. Raven's silhouette stood by the cabin door, head lowered, tail still. He pawed the ground anxiously, then looked back at Elias with pleading eyes. Something was wrong. Elias's boots crushed the brittle grass as he approached. "Easy, boy. I'm here." Raven backed away from the cabin door, not out of fear, but to make room, to show Elias something. Elias grasped the rusted handle. A chill crawled up his spine. The door creaked open. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and suffocating, as if untouched by light since the day Marlene left this world. A smell lingered, old wood dust, and something faintly familiar, something that pulled Elias back in time, a force that nearly knocked him breathless. Raven nudged his shoulder, urging him forward. Elias lifted a lantern from his hook, lit it with shaking hands, and stepped inside. The cabin glowed faintly, revealing shapes long abandoned. Marlene's rocking chair, covered in cloth, her empty boots by the hearth, her shawl still draped across the hook as if waiting for her return. Elias felt his throat tighten painfully. But then he saw it. On the floor, beside the chair, lay a small wooden box, one he'd never seen before. Raven whinnied, soft and broken. Elias knelt, lantern trembling in his hand, and opened the lid. Inside were Marlene's journals. All of them. He thought he had burned them after her death. Unable to face the words of a woman he could no longer save. But these had been hidden, protected. The first page was dated just weeks before she died. Elias froze. The final words, written in her delicate hand, read, "If something happens to me, don't blame yourself, and don't live alone. Someone will find you when the time is right." Elias's vision blurred. Raven lowered his head beside him, pressing softly into his shoulder, sharing the pain, holding the weight with him. Elias whispered, voice breaking, "Marlene, what will you try to tell me?" Elias sat on the dusty cabin floor, as if the world had suddenly grown too heavy to stand beneath. His lantern flickered weakly, casting trembling shadows across the wooden walls. Walls that had once heard Marlene's laughter and now echoed only with ghosts of memory. Raven stood close, so close that Elias could feel the warmth of his breath on his shoulder. The stallion's presence steadied him, kept him from collapsing completely. With hands trembling like brittle branches, Elias lifted the first journal from a box. Marlene's handwriting flowed across the page, soft and careful, the same way she lived. Elias hesitated before reading, afraid that seeing her words again would split his heart open all over. But Raven nudged him gently. "All right, boy," Elias whispered. "I'll read." He began. March 2nd. The coughing is worse. I haven't told Elias. He carries too much weight already. He works from dawn to night, pretending the farm is enough. But I see the loneliness even now. I fear what it will do to him when I'm gone. Elias stopped, closed his eyes as the memory struck hard. I wasn't lonely, he whispered to the empty room. I had you. Raven whinnied softly, almost as if reminding him. You still do, in a way. Elias turned the page with a breath that shook. March 18th. There's a young woman in town, Anna Calloway. Kind heart, gentle eyes. I don't know her well, but I see the way she looks at Elias when we pass. If only he would let someone in, perhaps one day, someone will find him the way I once did. Elias felt his throat tighten painfully. He remembered Anna. Polite hellos at the market, a warm smile he never thought twice about. He'd been blind to what Marlene saw, so clearly. He continued reading. April 4th. I've hidden this journal box in the cabin. Elias avoids this place. It hurts him too deeply since we lost a baby. But one day, I hope he comes back. If he does, maybe my words can help him forgive himself. Elias's entire body stilled. The air around him thinned. He whispered, Forgive myself? He could barely speak the words. Raven stepped closer, gently touching Elias's shoulder with his muzzle, grounding him in the present. Elias turned another page, vision blurring. April 20th. I'm growing weaker. Elias tries to pretend he doesn't see it, but fear lives behind his eyes now. If anything happens to me, I need him to know it wasn't his fault. Not the baby. Not my illness. He blames himself for everything wrong in this world. A tear fell onto the page. Then another. Elias pressed the journal to his forehead as grief poured out of him again, raw, shaking, unstoppable. All the guilt he had carried for years, all the blame he had placed on himself, began to crack beneath the truth Marlene left behind. Raven lowered himself slightly, touching Elias's arm, as if refusing to let the man drown in sorrow alone. Elias finally spoke. She knew me better than I knew myself. He turned one more page. April 28th. If the worst happens, I pray someone finds Elias before the loneliness takes him. A soul like his shouldn't vanish into the dark. Elias froze. Her final entry. Her final plea. Someone would find him. Raven let out a soft, hollow whine that trembled through the cabin. Elias looked at the horse. Truly looked. Was it you? He whispered. Are you the one she prayed would find me? Raven blinked slowly, stepping closer until his forehead rested gently against Elias's. The answer didn't need words. Elias broke again, but not with the sharp pain of loss. It was the overwhelming ache of gratitude, of being seen, of realizing he hadn't been alone in his suffering as he once believed. But before he could fully absorb the moment, Raven jerked his head toward the cabin window. His ears pricked sharply. Someone was out there. The stallion stomped once, warning thickened sound. Elias stood, wiping his face. What is it, boy? Raven cried again, the same haunting cry that had woken Elias earlier, but now filled with urgency, not sorrow. Elias grabbed a lantern and approached the window slowly. A shadow moved outside, small, hunched, trembling. A child, barefoot, soaked, crying silently in the cold. Elias's heart lurched. He ran to the door, Raven right behind him. When he stepped out onto the frosty ground, the child flinched backward, fear in every line of their tiny body. Hey! Elias knelt carefully. It's all right. I won't hurt you. The child looked up with wide, terrified eyes. Pee, please, the child whispered, voice thin as wind. Don't let him find me. Elias swallowed hard. Who? Behind them, Raven stomped and turned east, ears flat, as if sensing danger in the shadows. The child sobbed out a single, chilling word. Father. The night pressing around them like a living thing, cold, watchful, waiting. Elias stared at the trembling child, heart pounding, breath visible in the frost. Raven stood beside him, muscles taut, ears pinned sharply forward. The stallion sensed danger before Elias even understood it. The lantern flickered in Elias's shaking hand. What's your name? He asked gently. The child hesitated. backing away until their shoulders hit the side of the cabin. "Nora," she whispered. Her bare feet shifted in the dead leaves. I didn't mean to come here. I didn't know anyone lived so close." Elias swallowed hard. Her clothes were torn, and her skin was flushed from the cold. This wasn't a child who wandered here by accident. This was someone fleeing something. Or someone. "Nora," Elias repeated softly, "how long have you been out here?" Her lip quivered. "Since last night." Raven let out a low, rumbling breath. The same sound he used when protecting Elias from the coyotes that sometimes circled the farm. He stepped closer, lowering his head toward the girl. Nora's eyes widened in awe. He found me earlier. He didn't let the dogs get close." A chill slid down Elias's spine. Raven had been in the woods before coming to the cabin. He wasn't crying out of grief. He was crying out of warning. Elias knelt slowly to be level with Nora. "Your father, why are you afraid of him?" Nora's voice broke at the edges. "Because he's coming." She looked over her shoulder, eyes scanning the darkness. "He always comes." The wind gusted, as if echoing her fear. Elias's farm was miles away from any neighboring house, and beyond the cabin was nothing but dense wilderness stretching for acres. No one should be wandering here in the middle of the night, let alone a child. "Did you run away?" Elias asked carefully. Nora's hands clenched into fists. "He hurt my brother," she whispered, tears spilling. "And he said I was next." Elias felt something inside him tighten. Protectiveness, anger, panic. A memory flashed painfully. The small nursery he and Marlene once prepared, the room they never filled. Raven stepped forward again, planting himself between Nora and the forest darkness, as if daring any threat to come closer. Elias stood and extended a hand. "Nora, you're safe here. I promise." But she didn't take his hand. Instead, she looked past him at the cabin, at the old rocking chair behind a cracked window, at the dim glow of the lantern inside. "She wrote about me," Nora whispered suddenly. "In that book." Elias froze. "What did you say?" Nora brushed away her tears with the back of her hand. "The lady with the pretty smile. She used to sit where the chair is. She wrote in a little book. I saw her." Elias's breath caught. "Marlene." Nora pointed at the open cabin door. "I used to come here, before she got sick. She always gave me warm milk and told me stories. She never told my father." Elias felt his heart fracture in slow motion. How many secrets had Marlene kept? How many children had she helped while he was out in the fields, blind to her quiet acts of kindness? He whispered, "You knew her?" Nora nodded. "She told me if I ever needed help, I should come here." Elias sank to his knees, overwhelmed. "Marlene, why didn't you tell me?" he murmured to the empty air. Raven pressed his muzzle to Elias's shoulder, a grounding reminder that Marlene's compassion lived on through him and through this moment. Before Elias could gather himself, Raven suddenly jerked his head toward the tree-line. Alert, ears forward, nostrils flaring. A twig snapped. Nora gasped and grabbed Elias's coat. "He's here." Elias's blood ran cold. "Inside," he ordered, ushering Nora toward the cabin. Raven blocked the path for a moment, not wanting to leave Elias unprotected. But Elias gently tapped the stallion's neck. "Go with her. I need you to keep her safe." Raven hesitated, then obeyed, guiding Nora into the cabin with a soft push of his head. Elias stepped outside alone, closing the door behind him. The darkness around the cabin felt different now. Too still, too eager. Elias lifted the lantern high, scanning the tree-line. "Show yourself," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. A figure emerged, slow, tall, shoulders hunched. A man with a jagged silhouette and heavy boots. Nora's father. "Evening," he slurred, voice thick with menace. "Looking for my girl." Elias didn't move. "She's not going with you." The man chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. "You think you can stop me, old man?" Elias didn't blink. "Try." The stranger took one step forward, just one, before a thunderous cry split the night. Raven burst from the cabin, eyes blazing, mane whipping like black fire, a force of nature fueled by loyalty and fury. He placed himself between Elias and the man, hooves digging into the earth. The man staggered back. "You got that devil horse with you, huh?" he spat. "Thought I heard him earlier." Raven's nostrils flared. A warning. A promise. "You ain't taking her," Elias said. "Not now. Not ever." The stranger reached behind his coat. Metal glinted. A gun. Raven lunged forward before Elias could react. Hooves striking sparks off stone. The man fired, the shot echoing across the valley. Elias shouted, "Raven!" The world slowed. Raven stumbled. The lantern dropped from Elias's hand, glass shattering across the frost. The gunshot cracked through the forest like lightning splitting a dead tree. For a second, Elias couldn't breathe. He saw Raven jerk backward, his massive body twisting as the impact sent him stumbling across the frost-covered ground. "Raven!" Elias cried, sprinting toward him. The stallion staggered, hooves scraping the soil, breath sharp and ragged. A dark stain spread along his side, shallow but bleeding. He didn't fall, but he shook violently. His eyes, normally strong and steady, flickered with pain. Behind them, Nora's father lowered the gun again, sneering. "Should have stayed out of this, farmer. Horse ain't worth dying for." Elias positioned himself between Raven and the man, rage burning hotter than fear. "Stay back," Elias demanded. "I won't let you touch them." The man chuckled, tapping the side of his weapon. "You're old, you're slow, and you don't got enough left in your life to make this worth your trouble." Elias felt Raven's body press against him, weak but determined. The stallion's breath hitched, and yet he stepped forward, shielding Elias even now. "He's protecting me again." Elias clenched his fists. "You've hurt your daughter enough. It ends tonight." The man scoffed. "She's my blood, not yours." His boots crunched over the leaves as he approached. "You don't know what that girl is capable of. She lies. She steals. She survives," Elias interrupted coldly. "She survives you." A flicker of something, anger, humiliation, cruelty, twisted the man's face. "You want to know how she learned to lie so well? Her mother taught her before she ran off." He raised the gun again. "Now step aside." Elias's heart hammered. Behind him, Raven let out a low, rumbling sound, a warning pull from the core of his being. But the man stepped closer anyway. "I won't ask again." Elias swallowed hard. He could feel his pulse in his throat. He wasn't strong enough to fight a man with a gun. He wasn't fast enough to run. And yet, he would not let Nora suffer anymore. "I can't let you take her," Elias said quietly. "Not tonight. Not ever." The man's expression hardened. "Then die with your monster horse." He pulled the trigger. A second shot tore through the night, but this time, Elias saw it coming. He threw himself sideways, the bullet grazing his shoulder. Pain shot down his arm, but adrenaline kept him upright. Raven charged. Despite the wound, despite the agony, the stallion launched forward with a roar of air and fury, barreling into the man. The impact knocked the gun from his hand and sent him sprawling across the ground. Elias rushed forward, kicking the weapon aside into the brush. Nora burst from the cabin, tears streaming. "Stop," she cried. "Please stop." Her father scrambled to his feet, stunned but still dangerous. "Nora," he snarled, "you come here right now." She shook her head violently. "No more. I'm not going back." Raven limped toward her, nudging her gently, pressing his head against her shoulder, comforting her through his pain. The man's eyes darkened. That animal is poison, and she's following it straight to hell. Something inside Nora broke at those words. She screamed, a raw, heart-ripping sound, and pressed her hands over her face. Elias stepped in front of her. "You've heard her long enough." The man spat blood, fury overtaking him. "Kid's nothing but trouble. You'll see." Elias's voice turned ice cold. "She's a child, not a burden, not a mistake." Behind him, Raven let out a soft groan, the wound worsening. He lowered himself to his knees with effort. Nora ran to him immediately. "Please don't die," she whispered, stroking his face. "Please, Raven." The man took a step toward them. Elias blocked him again, but this time, the stranger wasn't looking at Elias. He was looking at the cabin, at the journals, at Marlene's handwriting visible on the open page. "What's this?" he sneered. "Some dead woman's diary?" Elias froze. "Leave it." The man walked toward the cabin door. "I said leave it." Elias roared, grabbing the man's jacket and slamming him against the wall. The man twisted, elbowing Elias hard in the wounded shoulder. Pain exploded, and Elias fell to one knee. The man stormed into cabin. Nora screamed, "No, don't touch her things." Elias staggered to his feet, just as the man lifted the journal box. "These are worth nothing," he scoffed. "Trash from a woman who abandoned." "Don't you say her name," Elias shouted, voice breaking with grief and rage. The man smirked, then hurled the journals toward the fireplace. They hit the hearth and scattered. Pages fluttered. A single envelope slid out and landed at Nora's feet. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Elias's heart stopped. He recognized the handwriting. Marlene's. The envelope was addressed to, "If this ever reaches her, Nora Calloway." The color drained from Elias's face. Nora looked up, breath quivering. That's my mother's name." Elias staggered backward. Marlene knew her. Marlene wrote to her. Marlene protected her. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Nora stood in the doorway of the cabin, the tattered envelope trembling in her hands. Raven lay beside her, breathing ragged and shallow, his dark coat slick with blood. Elias, barely standing, stared at the name written in Marlene's delicate handwriting. Nora Calloway. Marlene had known Nora. Marlene had written to her. But why? Nora looked up with wide, frightened eyes. "Why does your wife have a letter from my mother?" she asked softly, voice cracking. Elias opened his mouth, but no words came. Grief and confusion battered him from every direction. He staggered forward, kneeling beside the girl. I don't know," he admitted, "but if Marlene wrote something for her, then it matters. More than we understand." Nora clutched the envelope close. "Should I read it?" Elias hesitated. The moment felt fragile, sacred. Raven lifted his head weakly, pressing his muzzle to Nora's arm, urging her gently. "Yes," Elias whispered. "Read it." With trembling fingers, Nora opened the envelope. A single folded letter slid out, yellowed and soft with time. She unfolded it carefully. Her voice shook as she began reading aloud. "My dear Nora, if this reaches you, it means your mother and I both failed to protect you from the man who has caused you so much pain." Nora gasped. Tears filled her eyes immediately. "Your mother visited me often. She loved you more than life itself. She told me everything. I tried to help her leave. I tried to help you too. But fear is a cage harder to break than any locked door." Nora swallowed hard, voice breaking. She never told me this." Elias's jaw clenched, rage stirring in his chest. Nora continued, "If one day you find yourself in danger, come to this cabin. Elias is a good man, a gentle man. He will protect you the way I always wanted to." Elias felt the air leave his lungs. Marlene had chosen him, not out of pity, but because she believed in him when he no longer believed in himself. Nora's tears dripped onto the page. "Don't blame yourself. Don't fear love. And don't forget, you deserved a safer world, even if we fail to give it to you. Marlene Turner." Nora finished reading with a sob, clutching the letter to her chest as if holding her mother's voice. Elias wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "She cared about you. She cared about both of you, even when the rest of us didn't see." But the moment shattered when heavy footsteps crunched outside. Nora flinched. Raven's ears flicked weakly. Her father had returned. He stumbled into the lantern light, face twisted with fury. Blood trickled from a cut above his brow, where Raven had struck him. "You think a dead woman's lies are going to save you?" he snarled. "She manipulated all of you. You, the kid. She ruined everything." Elias rose slowly, pain radiating through every bone, but anger holding him upright. Marlene saved lives. She saved this girl. She tried to save you too. You just didn't want saving. The man glared at Nora. Letter don't matter. You're coming home. Nora shook her head violently. No, I won't. He took a step forward. Raven, struggling to stand, forced himself upright despite the wound tearing open again. He positioned himself between Nora and her father, legs trembling but spirit unbroken. Move, the man growled. I'm done playing games. Elias stepped forward too. You'll go through both of us. The man's eyes narrowed. Fine. He grabbed a broken log from the ground, brandishing it like a club. Nora screamed. Raven braced himself, ready to take another blow he could not afford. Elias lunged forward, too slow to stop what was coming. But fate intervened. A voice boomed from the tree-line. Drop it. Flashlights cut through the forest. 2 deputies from the county sheriff's office rushed into the clearing, weapons raised. The man froze. Step back from the child. One deputy ordered. Nora ran into Elias's arms, sobbing. Raven collapsed behind them, breath shallow but eyes still watchful. The deputies moved quickly, pinning her father to the ground as he cursed and fought, but he was no match for trained officers. Within moments, he was handcuffed and dragged away, screaming into the night. Silence returned, broken only by Nora's quiet sobs and Raven's labored breathing. Elias knelt beside the horse, stroking his mane. You saved her, he whispered. You saved all of us. Raven blinked slowly, breath warm but fading. Nora knelt beside him. Please don't die, she begged softly. You're the bravest soul I've ever known. Elias felt his heart clench. Raven had stood between them and death, again and again, but the wound was deep, too deep. Raven's breathing grew shallower, each exhale trembling like a candle flame fighting the wind. Elias pressed both hands against the stallion's wound, desperate, praying for pressure to slow the bleeding. His fingers shook, slick with warm blood that darkened the frosted ground beneath them. Stay with me, Elias whispered. Please, boy, stay with me. Nora knelt on Raven's other side, stroking his muzzle gently. Tears streamed down her cheeks, falling into the soft dirt. You can't leave us, she pleaded. Not now. Not after everything you did. Raven's eyes fluttered. Not fear. Not pain. Just exhaustion and a soft, heartbreaking trust. The deputies approached carefully, their flashlights lowered out of respect for the scene before them. We've called for the county vet, one of them said. She's on her way, but it might take a bit. Roads are rough up here. Elias nodded without looking up. His voice cracked like old timber. Just get her here. The night grew painfully quiet. Wind rustled through the pines, carrying the scent of winter and smoke and something fragile. Hope, maybe, clinging by a thread. Nora wiped her eyes. Elias, if he doesn't make it. Elias shook his head quickly, refusing to hear the words. He's strong. Stronger than any horse I've known. He leaned closer, forehead pressed to Raven's. You hear me? You still owe me 1,000 sunrises. I'm not letting you out of that promise. Raven exhaled shakily, nudging Elias's chest with the last of his strength. A promise returned. Nora's fingers tightened around Raven's mane. He saved my life. He saved yours. He saved us both. Her voice cracked. He deserves more than to die in the dark. Elias swallowed hard, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. He won't die, he whispered. Not tonight. But the fear inside him grew heavier, sinking like a stone. Blue lights flickered through the trees, the vet's truck navigating the narrow path. Relief washed over Elias and Nora like a warm tide in winter. Dr. Hayes, a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes, hurried toward them carrying a medical bag. Let me through, she said softly. Elias stepped back, hands trembling. Nora didn't move far, staying close enough for Raven to feel her presence. The vet knelt, examining the wound with careful fingers. Her brow furrowed, not reassurance, but concern. How bad? Elias whispered. She didn't look up. Bad, but not hopeless. He needs stitching, fluids, antibiotics. And he needs to stay awake. If he goes under now... She didn't finish. Nora sobbed. Elias sank beside the stallion again, placing his hand over Raven's strong, but fading, heartbeat. "You hear that, boy?" Elias murmured. "You gotta stay awake. You've carried us this far, now let us carry you." Raven blinked once. Slowly, trustingly, Dr. Hayes prepared her tools. "Talk to him," she said. "He knows your voice." Elias took a shaking breath. "Raven," he whispered, voice breaking, "you brought me out of the darkest years of my life. You gave Nora a chance to be free. You are not allowed to leave us now, not before the morning comes." The stallion's ear twitched, just enough to prove he was still fighting.